Hello again. I'm Andy Vining, reading My Mother's Diaries. And now we come to the end of 1950, the closing weeks. And this is episode 19. As autumn gave way, almost without warning, to winter, and all that came with it, November began with the children on half-term, and a little more movement about the house than usual. We went round to Beechcroft on Smoky one morning, and I had a ride which was great fun. The air fresh and carrying that faint scent of small fallen leaves. Edith Shuttler, Janet's friend, came for the day, and that kept things quite nice and lively. There was always something to be done indoors as well, and I had begun altering my evening dress, a job that would follow me right through the coming weeks. There were birthdays to remember, Winnie Dean's in particular, though it poured with rain all day. I took her present and flowers down, and we had a chat. And later, we went on a wonderful trip to Salisbury to collect Andrew home for half-term. It was so nice to see him. He looks very well, and boarding school seems to be treating him very well. We called in at Dean's again for Wynn's birthday tea, and then we went for a short visit to the Fries for a cup of tea with them. There were trips into Southampton with the children, boots to be bought, always something needed. Evenings were spent quietly, washing and mending Andrew's school clothes and keeping things in order. As Bonfire Night approached, excitement began to build. The kids worked hard building the bonfire and collecting all sorts of wood and rubbish, constructing it into a huge pile, and they made a guy and popped him on the top. John went off to football, as usual, a very exciting match, he said, winning 5-4 against Coventry, and Marjorie West called in the afternoon. And in the evening the fire was lit and we had a great display of fireworks. The bonfire blazing and an unmistakable smell of smoke in the air, all great fun. We had eggs and bacon after, and Frank and John went off to the Growmore quiz, and Wynne stayed the evening with me, which made for a pleasant end to the day. I baked a coconut cake for Andrew on the Sunday, his favourite, and there were visits from Mr. Cross and his usual coming and going of friends. Tommy Parker and Hugh appeared with one of their chickens, which was sick, which caused a certain amount of concern, as such things always do, but there's not a lot you can do for a sick chicken, so I hope it'll be okay. And then, as ever, life returned to its steady rhythm. Up early for washing and taking Andrew back to school after his half-term holiday. We had a ride. I baked a coconut cake for Andrew on the Sunday, his favourite, and there were visits from Mr. Cross and his usual coming and going of friends. Tommy Parker and Hugh appeared with one of their chickens, which was sick, which caused a certain amount of concern, as such things always do, but there's not a lot you can do for a sick chicken, so I hope it'll be okay. And then, as ever, life returned to its steady rhythm. Up early for washing and taking Andrew back to school after his half-term holiday. We had a ride with Julie down to the village, and I did the ironing in the afternoon. The same day, we had the heifer carving. That was a great disappointment. It was a dead bull calf, and that was really, really disappointing, but that's farming. By evening, I was so tired I slept most of it by the fire in the dining room. The days moved along with their usual mixture of work and small happenings. The hounds came sweeping across the cricket field one morning, a sudden burst of excitement that had everybody watching. There was gardening to be done, ground to be dug for the roses, and endless darning in the evenings. Then came the pig killing. The slaughterers arrived and took it away, and it's on a day like that. It always requires a certain amount of steadiness of mind, but it was followed almost incongruously by a visit to the hairdresser's. Life has a way of placing such things side by side. Rain set in again for a time, and I went into Eastleigh to buy Mother a present, before going to Beechcroft for her birthday. That evening we went to a tea dance at Romsey, which, though rather small, just a few people, and we went with the Deans, but it was quite enjoyable. There were the usual small disruptions. The car broke down and John nearly missing his Masonic, but he went to Hursley by bus and was brought back by Kath and Norman. And the following evening we had supper at the Dean's with our own pig's liver and bacon. It was beautiful. Auntie Toss and Uncle George went off to stay with Cyril Wisbech for a while, and that made things a little quieter at home, and that was quite pleasant to know that they'd gone for a while. Some days were bright, cycling round to the meetings in the morning, only for the weather to turn miserable again by afternoon. The children, as always, made their own entertainment. They were practising and putting on a little concert for us, and that was quite jolly. And so it went on, washing days, ironing, suppers with Bet and Fred, pig's trotters one evening, and early nights when needed. There were dances at St Boniface Hall and old-time dancing at the Ritchie Hall, tea afterwards at the Dean's, and those evenings were always great fun. As the month went on, we began to turn our thoughts quietly towards Christmas. Wallflowers were planted out, shopping trips made to Winchester, for Christmas presents, new clothes for the children, and Bill Wicks came in to do the books as he does now. There was a trip into Southampton for taffeta for the girls' skirts, cake tins borrowed, fruit prepared, and then one afternoon I made the Christmas cakes, the smell of them beautifully filling the kitchen. There were small successes too. We did well at the poultry show. We had prizes for our eggs, and that cheered us up no end. And evenings spent sewing, adding sequins to my dress, each stitch bringing it a little closer to being finished. On the 22nd November was our wedding anniversary, and we spent it quietly. A cup of tea at the Dean's after shopping down the village, and then we popped into the Ritchie Hall, and then friends came to the farmhouse in the evening, Parkers, Beatons, the Deans, along with the kids, simple but very happy. And then came a little adventure. We went up to London in the Dean's new car, a beautiful Rover, and it was an anniversary trip from the Deans for us. We had dinner at the Ariston, and on to see Ivor Novello's in The King's Rhapsody at the Palace Theatre. It was wonderful, and we enjoyed it very much indeed. Returned home late, tired but pleased to have had the outing. By the end of November I had a cold coming on, which duly arrived with a vengeance. Even so, there was still much to be done, ironing, sewing, and one day buying Andrew a train set in Southampton, a Graham Farish. We spent some time trying to get it going, but it wouldn't work at all, which was most disappointing. Still, we ended the month cheerfully enough, going out to the cantina, deciding quite firmly to enjoy ourselves regardless. And then December came in, wet and grey at first, with rain beating steadily throughout the day. We went to Salisbury for Andrew's school concert, and I must say, he was in Alice in Wonderland, and he was Alice, and he looked most fetching in a little blue skirt with a white pinafore, though, as we all said, at a boys' school, an all-boys school, someone has to be the girl, and it was Andrew. It was a jolly good performance, and we were very, very proud of him. The days that followed were full, football matches, more dressmaking, and the usual comings and goings. Unfortunately, a fox got in amongst the ducks early one morning and killed some of them, which was a great loss. The fox was very determined as it broke into the duck's house. And then the first snow arrived, though it did not last. It came and went very quickly. My cold began to spread around the house, Jennifer and John both suffering, and I did what I could to keep things going. There were trips to the village, visits to friends, and evenings of dancing, though sometimes one was just too tired or too cold to go on. Just before Christmas we went to collect Andrew from school, and we had his school report, which we thought was quite good. He was 11 out of 18 in the class, but very much younger than most of them. But it said that he must improve his reading and writing. On the way home from Salisbury it started snowing, and it came down thick that night. By morning everything lay white and still, and it always caused so much extra work because the cows had to be kept in the cowshed overnight and had to be littered up, and there was cleaning to be done before they could be milked in the morning. They were busy days, sewing late into the night, finishing the girls' frocks, and one night not going to bed until 2 o'clock, but I got them finished at last. The house had to be put in order, bedrooms made ready, and carols were practised at the sanatorium. The weather turned difficult, freezing, thawing, rain and fog all in one day. Washing hanging on the rack in the kitchen to dry. Christmas presents packed, cakes iced and marzipan, Christmas cards written. That's always a big job. There was shopping in Winchester, chickens to be drawn for customers. 13 of them one evening with Bet and Fred helping. Visits to friends and more callers than one could quite keep up with, collecting their chickens. Christmas Eve was, as always, full. Baking, jellies, stuffing the turkey, carol singing in the evening at the sanatorium, and then home again for a little merriment and mince pies and cherry brandy with Joan and Les. Christmas Day itself began early. We all went down to the church at 7 for the Christmas service, then home to presents after breakfast. Mother and Bet with us, a very happy day, ending with a game of darts in the evening. Boxing Day bought the meat at the Dog and Crook in Bracefield. Jennifer went riding over there on Smoky, and it was a marvellous sight of fox and hounds. And later, the ballet at the Gaumont, Coppelia, which we all enjoyed greatly, followed by an evening at the Dean's. Then, the day after Boxing Day, the whole family, Father's birthday, went to Bournemouth for the pantomime, Aladdin, which was excellent, and afterwards we had an evening with the Beatons. And then the police ball at the Guildhall, a lovely evening with friends, great fun. The cold stayed with us, the children skating on the pond and on Charnersford Lake, just off Lakewood Road, and others went off to parties. Though by the end, Jennifer and Janet were quite unwell one night, which quietened them down considerably. They didn't feel very well. And so the year came to its close. New Year's Eve was a very quiet day. The children subdued, cows were milked, the wireless was on in the background, and John and I saw in 1951 together, with a small glass of sherry brandy, as the house settled and another year slipped quietly into the past. We said goodbye to 1950 and hello to 1951. It had been a year of work, family, and the steady rhythm of life at Hiltonbury Farm. And so, as the last of the year slipped away and the house grew quiet again after Christmas, I found myself thinking back over all that 1950 had brought us. It had been a full year from the very first days, when winter still held the fields in firm grip, through the long, anxious weeks of spring and summer, when the haymaking and the harvest hung so much in the balance. I can see it now, those heavy skies over the fields, and John watching them more closely than he ever let on, willing the weather to hold, and fearing quietly that it might not. And then the building of the new cowsheds, such a great undertaking at the time. 36 standings, the Tilly lamps hanging there in the dark, and the Lister engine chugging steadily to drive the vacuum pump for the milking machines, and the cows getting used to the new system, bringing a little more progress to the farm, though not without its worries and work. There were calves born, the Hiltonbury herd of pedigree jerseys growing, and unfortunately we lost some. Good days and disappointing ones, as they always are on a farm. And yet, somehow, we carried on through them all. The children grew as they do so quickly, school terms and holidays passing almost before one could take hold of them. Concerts and parties, clothes to be made and mended, and always a house full of noise and life. Andrew went away to his boarding school, such an adventure for such a young lad. There were friends in and out as ever, the Deans, the Beatons, Bet and Fred, the Baisleys, the Millers, the Wests, and Mother and Bella, and many others. Evening of dancing at the hall, suppers shared round the kitchen table, and those small moments of laughter that seemed in the end to matter most of all. And then, almost before we were ready for it, winter came again, with snow in the ground. Fires lit and the work turning inwards to cakes, puddings, parcels, and all the preparations for Christmas. Looking back now, it does not seem a year of great events, yet it was made up of so many things, each one small on its own, but together, everything. And so we closed the year as we'd lived it, not with great ceremony, but quietly, grateful for what we had, and hopeful as always for what the next year might bring. And that was Hiltonbury Farm in 1950 from my mother's diaries. Thank you for listening.